Paul Gleason, a longtime firefighter and Hotshot superintendent, developed LCES: Lookouts, Communications, Escape Routes, and Safety Zones.
LCES pretty much came from my years down in Southern California in the 60s fighting fire. We didn't have squad bosses there called crew pushers. My job was to make sure the crew was physically fit, running in their boots, the starch green Levi's on and t-shirt, and chanting through the fire, through the flame, on to victory, on to fame, hot shots, and that went real strong in 64, 65, 66, and then November 11th when the Loop fire occurred, and 12 fatalities there. That kind of just swung at least my attitude all the way around from chanting this kind of stuff. And I guess I realized after the Loop fire, that people could get killed on fires, and the LCS was for me, and it was so I could try to save a house, to protect some area, accomplish a tactic in volatile condition, and not end up at the end of the year opening up a closet and having 12 skeletons hanging in my closet. So you can be up close and personal with a hot running fire and still do it safely.
Today, the use of LCES is common practice in the firefighting community and continues to evolve with each passing year. In this program, we will focus on the L, Lookouts, in LCES.
A lookout needs to be somebody that's not engaged with the work itself, and somebody who's monitoring, watching the environment, not watching the ground or swinging a tool. If safety is our number one priority, and I believe we all want it to be, then having a person apparently not producing fire line, but monitoring the whole fire environment is critical.
This program will cover picking a lookout, picking the number of lookouts, determining the best spot, mentoring a new lookout, looking out in the wildland-urban interface, looking out at night, communicating, talking on the radio, and paying attention and keeping engaged.
There's a couple things. There's a difference between a lookout and a set of eyes, right? A lot of people, maybe they mistake the two. So there's a person, and you might put them up on a ridgeline, but they're just a set of eyes. I'm just asking them to look at, help me navigate. I can't see because I'm buried in 10-foot brush or in 50-foot trees. I can't see too well. I can't see exactly some of the things. You're just a set of eyes. They're not telling me to get out, right? There's a difference. If you look at the lookout as a component of the LCS system, right, which it is, the lookout's job is to sound the alarm. His job is to tell those folks they need to move. Right? That's their job. That's the sole purpose.
We want to have the best eyes on the fires we possibly can. You want to have someone who has, at least a few years of fire experience, so they have an understanding of what's important. If you put someone that's too new in that position and they see a single tree torch and they get on the radio and get a lot of people excited about something that's not a big issue, then that can cause a lot of confusion on the line. They got to be confident in their knowledge of fire suppression and what's a problem and what's not a problem.
You need to have somebody that knows fire behavior, appropriate terminology. That way, when you're talking back and forth with them, if you're their contact on the fire, and they're using the terminology that you're familiar with.
Usually we'll have a lookout that is from the area, knows the area, knows the vegetation, the fuel type, knows the fire activity in the area, just because you can trust someone that has experienced it, that has seen it.
That's what we mainly look for, is experience and confidence in themselves to be able to serve as a lookout.
I'm paying that person to tell me to get out. I don't want them to go, hey, what do you think, should you go? I want them to say, hey, it's time. Right, and sort of a sub part of that decision making is the confidence, right? So you got your crew down there, and you start to second guess. Is that smoke really a problem? And what if I call those guys to get out and it's nothing, right? And so there's this balancing act. You got to be able to make the decision, and you have to have the confidence to to pull the trigger on it, regardless of if it was a threat or not. You can tell if somebody has the ability, we call it the ability to run it, right? The ability to run a situation. And the ability to run it just means that regardless of the situation, regardless of how they got there, they're going to continue to solve the problem, right? And so there's people that are not confident and they can't run it. They're not there yet. And then when they're put in the hot seat, who knows what's going to happen? But I know this person's going to at least try to solve the problem.
How they're picked and who should be picked, there is a difference at times, and sometimes the wrong person gets picked. Sometimes it's the one that's a little, I wouldn't say inept, but not, sometimes maybe not pulling their weight. Maybe they're not feeling too good. They might have maybe a small injury to where they can't stay on the line for very long, but that's not the right reason to do it, because they need to be able to be mobile and also be able to do the job correctly.
Make sure that whoever you have or whoever you select, you know you can trust them, and you know that they know what they're doing, because they are watching your back for you.
I mean, the L, just like any other part of LCES, the L, the C, everything changes depending on the situation. What's an appropriate lookout in one situation might completely be overkill or way less than what you need, all depending on the situation. If we go up on some little lightning fire and it's 1/10 of an acre and we're all circled around it, lining it, we're all being a lookout. You're really going to have somebody up on the hill when you can see across the whole fire and you can see everything around you?
They're real small fires during initial attack phase. It's pretty simple. All the firefighters themselves are acting as lookouts for one another. When you have a small group of people, they can look out for one another. It just depends on the size and location of the fire. Again, as you start the growth of that fire, you have to provide more lookouts, more of these people that are working. So if you have broken up into divisions, you might have several of these people that are being more mobile on that section of the fire that can see sections of the fire at a time. So you have multiple lookouts.
So it comes down to probably how new or unfamiliar you are with that piece of ground. So first day on a fire with this fire behavior, first day in this region, first across the board, right? You're going to have a lot of lookouts because there's a lot of unknowns. There's a bunch of open line, don't know what the fire behavior is, don't know where anything's at, don't have any reference points, not oriented, whatever.
A lot of times it can't just be one person just going and getting that good primo spot where they're just going to see, because there isn't one. So you're going to have people kind of best place that I can see this, and somebody else over here where I can see that, and then maybe you can kind of try. It's almost like trying to put together a big puzzle, where you just piece everything together off of the different lookouts that you might have to set up, and kind of get a picture by just everybody kind of pitching in and seeing what they can see.
So that can be the big challenge, is just finding a good spot. And it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a while to find that, especially if you're far away from the fire and there's no clear view.
As far as location, I like high points myself, somewhere where I can see all around a 360 view, somewhere I can get out on the radio.
A lot of stuff is just being able to see and to observe the fire. So sometimes that's the big challenge. You're in a good place for a little bit, for half the day, things change, and then you got to move. And so if the fire progresses, you need to progress around with it.
Sometimes it's difficult to get into a good position to be the lookout. Say you're across the canyon, you might have to do some serious rock climbing to get up to some lookout. So then what if something flared up on the fire side and threatened to cross? How long is it going to take you to get down? you know, or get out of the way. And maybe going up isn't an option because you might have a long ways, steep country. So, I mean, it's something, you know, as you're setting up your lookout, sometimes you might defer to put them in a place that's not going to be threatened.
Well, you know, obviously the biggest difference is we don't have topography here. We have little bits of hills, but they're pretty minuscule. So generally when you're at a fire, you're looking at canopy, blocking your view of a broader area.
And I keep thinking about, you know, especially like going back east and stuff, I mean, we just don't get as scattered out typically. You're looking out from the line, you're looking out from the edge. You know, you're not just up on a high point somewhere because you can't see everything.
As we're stretched out up and down this chunk of line, we are each other's lookout. So the tail's back there, and that's where cold black is. That's where our safety zone is. And so this is our egress from the activity where we're all working out to you know, the safety zone. So we're lookouts for each other up and down that piece of line. So we all need to be talking up and down the line and communicating so that we all understand the big picture. You know, some of the things we'll try to do is get somebody to back up from the fire, and that may be going out into the lake. Paddle out into the lake, go out on that island and park out there. You might not be able to see the exact where the fire is and where the firefighters are, but if something's, you know, puffing up and starting to get real active, it's just like going up high. It's not quite as good, but we can back up and then see the fire activity from what the smoke column's indicating.
Out west, you have a lot different role. You're really able to see everything, see what everybody's doing. Where here, you can't see everybody, so basically you're relying on the communication to know what everybody's doing, you know, what both sides of the fire are doing. We might send them to a high, what we're gonna call a high spot for this area. It's an area they won't be able to see the whole fire. They might be able to see a portion, but that's just an area they can communicate. Here, most of the time, our lookouts are around their truck, are able to drive to the point where they're serving as the lookout.
We have so much road access down here compared to out west. We've got a lot more road systems in our forest than the western states do, so you can get a lot more places. Sometimes just as simple as something that's going around the corner of a road, you might be able to see one half of the fire here or the other half of the fire over there.
How we use lookouts is we try to find a higher point. If not, then we try to find a best area that's kind of clear and viewable to where the fire's at and where the crews will be working at. So even if it's on the bottom and it's big enough and clear enough to where you can see up ahead where the crews are working, then we'll use that if need be.
And try to do the best you can to find a spot, you know, where you can get on top of a vehicle or someone that's actually just monitoring smoke and increase in fire behavior. If we think it's the hottest part of the day, we'll maybe get to a safer area closer to the safety zone. If we know previous fire behaviors, if it's going to blow up or something, things are going to start picking up, we'll get closer to the safety zone and not have to rely on the lookout, you know, because it's so flat.
We're flatlanders. We don't have mountains to be lookouts, so what we use is aircraft a lot of time.
Another thing we use heavily in the south is our helicopters. That's probably our #1 lookout. They have a vantage point of every personnel on the ground. They can communicate with every personnel on the ground, and they can see what the fire's doing. It's not uncommon at all to call a helicopter just for a lookout purpose.
So there is a point where if you're relying on aircraft to be a lookout, there is a point where they're going to be gone. That's just a fact. You should always plan on not having an aircraft. Because what are you going to do when they're gone? What's your out? And they're going to be gone. You know, they're going to have to go get fuel, or they're going to have to go eat lunch, or you know, something's going to happen. If you're relying on that and they all go away, then you don't have an alternative. There's no plan B. And that's not a good place to be in.
But if you take away that aerial lookout that's looking down on your fire, you might have to have multiple lookouts on each little section of the fire to see all the portions of that fire.
If I was going to train on one thing, it's decision making, right? Because that lookout, their job is to say, hey, get out of there, right? And that's, on paper, that's super easy to say, but you need to train on decision making. You know, the best way to get good at hiking is to hike, right? The best way to get good at decision making is to make decisions. So they have to get exposure to it. There's not always the chance for the first year guy to sit on the rock and make the big decision, right? The decision to pull the crew out, but there are thousands of opportunities a season to put somebody in the hot seat on a sand table and go, you know, no risk, right? Here, make the decision, practice it.
Well, if there's a rookie up there, we place them up there with an experienced individual, so that way they'll teach them what they need to look for, what they need to expect.
For the new lookouts, just having somebody showing them the actual on-the-ground example, here's the fire, here's the crew, this is what's happening, and then explaining to them their part in all of that and what they should be doing and what's the communication they should be giving and what are they seeing. That's kind of where it starts. You know, there's only so many things you can do, like in a checklist in a classroom situation. You could go through all of this stuff. But until they're actually out there on a fire and then they can see it and then be hearing from the person who's training them, hey, this is what we talked about. This is what it looks like in real life. And then they're not just sitting up there like, oh, what am I supposed to be looking at? What am I seeing? And it really helps them kind of get more of the idea of all the things that, you know, that instead of them sitting by themselves, is this significant? Is this something I should share?
You know, you just don't send them out there going, you're our lookout. All right, goodbye. Over the course of the day or days, you know, give them good feedback. Give them good feedback, definitely at the end of the day, but even during the day you can come on the radio and come back and say, yeah, that was good, or you know, maybe too much. But you know, still keep them encouraged to the point to where you know, you don't scream and holler at them. But you want to have them to have confidence to be able to come back and say, hey, this is what I see, this is what I've got. If they are giving too much, then say, hey, you know, maybe tone it down just a little bit, but thank you for the information. Good for the eyes. You know, thanks for the eyes out there. So it builds their confidence too at the same time.
It always seems like when you do have crews in the urban interface, we're shoved up some drainage where you can't see, and some houses tucked in just deep in the brush or the trees, and it's challenging because very rare do you come across a structure that is also a safety zone that you can be in there and you feel good with. So escape times and things, time to get out and mobility, it becomes super challenging. Fire moves fast. If it's burning through the houses, it's typically wind driven. It's not backing in all gentle. So everything's accelerated timing and speed, and getting out and everything is a little bit more complex. It's tough to have the classic lookout in that situation. It's a lot of short range stuff, and somebody who can see right in front of you what's going on here right now, but maybe not have a complete view of the big picture. And so those things are challenging. I think it's right out of LCS and Other Thoughts. I think Paul calls them roving lookouts or short range stuff, where they're just, you know, there's not the location to see everything. And so you're short range. I can see this operation in front of me. I can see this drainage. I can see this chunk of line we're cutting right this second, and I can see the issues that affect me here, but I don't have a view of the big picture. So you're relying on a ton of communication back and forth, because there's a lot more of the picture that you're trying to fill in for that person, and vice versa.
Being a lookout at night is a real challenge. That in itself, you know, even for the experienced person, you can't really see a whole lot. You have to base it on fire behavior because all you've got is smoke and flame. Sometimes personnel, you can see that because of the headlamps, but sometimes you can't because of the vegetation inside there.
It's tough. All your visual cues are gone. You can't see the line, you can't see the edge. So there's like the worst case scenario, you show up at night, you haven't seen it in the daylight and you're trying to figure it out. To try to keep oriented and stuff, hang glow sticks on the low parts of the line so you can tell, okay, the glow stick's here, everything above it, there should be red glows, anything below it's no good, right? Some basic things like that. And then it's just, again, it's a lot of communication, headlamps, people moving around. It becomes really important for the person on the ground, the person being looked out for, to be able to communicate back, hey, this is what this is. Because at night everything looks worse, right? You see a glow and you go, man, that looks bad. And the guy goes, hey man, that's a log buried in whatever. So that person's ability to articulate back, hey, this is what that is. So for a frame of reference, that giant glow you saw was nothing, right? Or it wasn't a threat, and this is why. And so, yeah, it's being able to paint the picture of what's really going on the ground. You know, as I look out at nighttime, I find I end up sending people on a lot more, hey, go tell me what this looks like missions, go walk that piece, and you see the headlamps, the glow, and then you get that feedback and I go, no, that's not an issue, that's a smoldering yucca in a rock patch. And that. So I find myself at nighttime, there's a lot more, they probably don't like it, but there's a lot more, hey, go check this out for me and tell me what this looks like and those types of things. And then finding a location is tough too. So if you haven't seen it in the daytime and you're trying to find a location at night in unknown terrain, you can have great map reading skills, but you're still gonna have a hard time finding the place, you know, getting into a good location.
Trying to find your way back is another challenge. Getting lost is not fun. You know, if you walked out there in the day to your site, then you got to walk back, you know, at night. If you didn't flag your way in, it's, you know, trying to find your way out in the evening is really tough.
Helicopters, they might help ease some of those lookout challenges. You know, especially with the air attack at night, they're a lot less, there's no air tankers flying at night, so they're a lot more focused on the ground people at night, and they can be much more helpful than in the day. In the daytime, there's no way you would get that kind of one-on-one because there's just so much going on.
The lookout position can be, you know, kind of make or break communication. I mean, that really puts a lot of weight on that lookout spot. It's not just the eyes for the crew, but it's also just the entire operation could be compromised by not getting that right information to the different folks, and then it really could affect the success of the whole mission, and not just your crew, but everybody on the whole division or the whole fire.
Yeah, because communication's a two-way street. It works out both ways, and sometimes they'll communicate back to you, and sometimes they forget. And if they do, then that'd be your job to say, hey, come on, did you hear this? After everybody else starts chiming in and says, yeah, we copy, and sometimes that's all it takes. You know, remind some folks. But sometimes maybe they're in a hole and they can't get out. You have to wait a little bit, or it might be something where they really can't. And so then you have someone else will probably go check up on them that's on the line.
The person you're talking to who's being looked out for, that communication back and forth is super critical. He can't see it because he's buried in 10-foot brush, and the lookout can't see the fire behavior on the ground and how steep the terrain is and the rocks and things like that. And so it's sort of this communication that's filling in the blanks for both sides. That helps that lookout make a better decision. That helps the person on the ground, you know, do their job better.
And I know, like, for a lot of the new lookouts, it seems to be one of the things they really get nervous about is, well, what if I don't tell you something when I need to tell you? And what if I'm not telling you what you need to know when you need to know it? Like, what if something's burning a little bit hotter? When do I get nervous?
If you're not sure, and I've been unsure so many times, see maybe a smoke, think, well, should I call it in? Does it look minor? Is it gonna be major? I finally learned, just go ahead and call it in. If it turns out to be a wrong call, at least you were smart enough to call it in, because it could turn out different the other way.
I tell those guys, well, you know what? If you're wrong, we can always go back in. We can always hike back in, right? But I don't want to get chased out because you're hemming and hawing and hesitating. But I'd rather err on the side of caution than get chased out of there and fear for my life. So
when I say good communication skills, I'm kind of talking like you need to have your map in your hand referring to drop point whatever. Use very clear language on the radio, and not a lot of that over there by the big rock where we got stuck at type stuff. It's what I call good communication skills.
One of the biggest deals is just getting the we're saying the same thing, but just making sure we have the same meaning for the same terms. You know, how we say just our hollers or our creeks or, you know, something like that. You know, it's something that that communication barrier is usually always addressed the first couple of days. You know, when y'all saying that, are you meaning this? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. And they're like, okay, well then let's get that squared away so we won't have any issues there.
And sometimes they're just not good communicators. That could be another thing. You know, once you put a radio in someone's hands, the human nature is, I don't want to talk on this thing.
you can take a confident 20-something man or woman who's been successful all their life, and you put a radio in their hand and it freaks them out, right? And so you do that on the sand table 100 times, and then when they have to go do it for real in the field, they're a little bit more confident. All we're really doing is just giving them a problem. It's just a random thing. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even have to have a solution. But yeah, you give them a radio, you give them a frequency, you get somebody in the other room on the other end, and they just practice talking into it. They get the little shaky hand and they're trying to talk into it the first time, and the second time at some point they get a little bit more comfortable, and that doesn't become an issue. So then you can challenge them a little bit more.
One of the things for new people is they can get too verbal with what's going on. And so you've got to watch that. You know, just keep it short, keep it simple. It's not a big conversation piece.
A lot of times you get folks that are good that get in those positions and they get a little bored, you know, especially on slow days, and they start calling you, clogging up traffic, and just being clear, short, and to the point of passing on messages. Don't drag stuff on too long, you know, because especially like if you're on a tactical frequency, as a good communicator, someone who's good with sending clear messages and getting to the point, passing the message on short messages, not dragging on too long.
But a lot of people, they're not able to go through the whole process of not having the immediate feedback that you would get if you're having a conversation with somebody face to face, or if you're talking with them on the phone. It's not a constant flow of conversation. It's I talk, then you talk, then I talk, then you talk. And then there's also the people that are always thinking ahead. You know, they're one step ahead of you. Yeah, and those are typically the people that talk over you. You know, when you're in a conversation with somebody and they cut you off in the middle. Those types of people I found have a horrible problems when they're talking on the radio, because they can't do that, right? Like those people that cut you off are they have to wait for you to get done.
Sometimes we have certain lookouts that are very good at being a human repeater. I mean, they don't change the message, and they don't alter it. They don't paraphrase it in a way that takes away the meaning, and you can rely on them impeccably to tell the other person exactly what you're trying to tell them. And that's really key. Like for me, if I'm trying to relay an important message down to the crew and I'm in a different location but I can't reach them, if my lookout changes what I'm saying, you know, not intentionally, but if they just aren't quite understanding, and then, you know, then that increases a lot of the radio traffic trying to get that clear message through. Meanwhile, the guys on the other side are getting something different, and then they're like, well, what? You know, that doesn't make sense.
You know, another thing about that being a lookout, how do they talk over the radio at times? You know, if they're not real tense and think everything is a big to-do, I guess you could say. That can be just as helpful to the folks on the ground. Not the other way, like, you know, run away, run away. Everybody grab your shelter and get out. You'd be surprised how, you know, in times of a stressful a stressful thing, that the voice over the radio can kind of get you thinking a little bit better and not amping you up.
But the real main part and the real crux of the whole issue of being a lookout is making sure that you're paying attention to what's going on and you've got good situational awareness of everything that's going on.
You're in one place and you have to just concentrate on staying awake and being alert. That's the hardest part. And you are in the sun. That makes it that much more worse, because you're not moving, you're not doing really anything physical. And so it does work on your mind, put it that way.
And I can admit it, I've been a lookout before and been bored. Been sitting there, not just kind of like, oh, there's nothing going on, this is kind of lame, like I wish I was down there cutting down a tree or whatever. But then, you know, caught myself, you know, oh, okay, I need to get back on task here. You know, the way I see it, that's the biggest part of being a lookout is having that constant, you know, mentality. So if you set some sort of a trigger up to make you kind of reel yourself back into what you're really supposed to be doing, you know, you could establish some way for yourself, whatever stimulates your brain to get back on track. And so it could be anything from setting an alarm on your watch or on your smartphone.
I usually try to pick out stuff. I'll say every 3 minutes I'm going to look at these points, or I just turn it into a game. You know, see if that bird's still on its nest over there. You know, ever so often identify trees as far away as I can, but stay focused in that direction of where you're supposed to be watching.
You know, get up and move around, or do some push-ups. Yeah. Maybe you know, you don't want to take a bunch of time and do a bunch of push-ups because that's not what you're supposed to be doing when you're at the lookout, but maybe do like 25 or 30 or whatever. Get your blood going.
Yeah, little forms of entertainment, something to do. You can make a little cook fire, you can have your lunch, you know, be a little innovative. Having something else there, like I said, a radio of some sort, if you can get some kind of a reception, but nothing, no earbuds, and it keeps your mind a little occupied on some things. But you can still pick up and you can still hear what's going on, you can see what's going on.
One of my brothers asked me, did you get any sleep? I told him, I really wished I could. I really do, but that is so unsafe and so stupid that you can't even think of something like that. I would think that if he or she is really not into it, they should step down and let somebody else take over, because it's not something that you could just take lightly. You have to pay attention. You have to be alert. You can't have your mind at home and your body here.
When I was first coming up in fire, you did not want to be his lookout, because you didn't feel like you was getting the full impact of the fire, the full aspects of the fire. You wasn't down there digging line. You felt like your role may not be as important as somebody else's. Don't get discouraged if you keep getting put in the lookout. It's because the people that are putting you in them positions just respect you and trust you and know that you'll do a really fine job at that position. And they're basically putting their lives in your hand in case of a situation turns bad.